This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by C2E2, the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo.
Reed and
Sue.
Peter and
Mary Jane.
Kitty and
Peter.
Scott and
Emma.
No, Gene! Another edition of iFanboy, the comic book discussion show from the website iFanboy.com. As always, I am Ron Richards, and I'm here with Conor Kilpatrick.
Hello, people of Earth.
And unfortunately, Josh Flanagan.
fuck you. I am Josh Flanagan. We want to talk about relationships.
Let's really
in comics.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, let's keep this.
The show was gonna do this.
Yeah. Let's not make this intimate. Let's just keep it at ironic arm's length.
Okay.
So comic books, comic books, especially superhero comics, whether we want to
soap
admit
operas.
it or not, they're soap operas. They're extended serial dramas that, while they have fists and tights and punching and fights and cosmic battles, they've also got relationships and people and romances.
And they're as important as anything else.
And for every dude who's ever made fun of a chick for her watching her chick flicks,
or soap
comics,
operas.
Ongoing superhero comics are totally chick flicks.
Totally.
In their way, because no, he's supposed to be with
Oh, I just remembered one. Okay,
Mary Jane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so on and so
Same
forth.
exact thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're gonna talk about relationships in comics. We're gonna kind of talk about superheroes because they're the ones that've got the most years and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some outside of superhero stuff we'll get to. But when I think of relationships in comics for both Marvel and DC, there are two couples that come to mind.
The pinnacle couple of these sort of there's that couple that sort of defines all other couples, and in Marvel it's Reed and Sue.
The first family.
The Fantastic
Reed Richards,
Four.
Sue Storr of the Fantastic Four.
Yep, exactly.
They're the stable married couple.
Somehow they made it through the '60s. And all
Their
that seething
relationship,
sexism.
there were some rocky times.
moments, though.
Oh
yeah.
no, they've always had. It seems as if it seems as if Reed and Sue. Well, it started out they were boyfriend girlfriend, then they got married, the epic wedding, and over the years they've had their challenges. They've had kids. We've grown up with them as a family.
He loves
think
science
the most-
more than Sue.
Well, right,
loves
he's
me
completely. He's married to his work and everything, and that's the big thing. But literally, she is this close to traipsing off with Fishboy.
Yeah,
At any point, and I remember just reading, they're gonna do this? like I just feel like in comics they're just one step away from Sugar fantasizing in a shower.
Yeah.
Because this is water. But
But so yeah, and you get the classic, Reed, unshaven Reed yelling at her, and in this, that's why we talked that our Fantastic Four episode a while back, how the rampant sexism where Reed's saying women should be seen, not heard, and stuff. But they've
irony of
evolved,
that.
and Sue has grown into a leader of the Fantastic Four. She's been very capable, and she's been, even with the awful costume.
but if you look over time, like her powers actually elevated that she became the most powerful member of all of them, and I think that it's almost like this post-feminist thing. Like like after she got treated like shit for so long, they come back around and she becomes the most powerful one, and it's kind of the most interesting in that way.
And also, and very much in the Stan Lee Marvel vision, is that they're very real and that they have arguments, and they during Civil War they were on opposite sides, and they they were separated.
I forgot about that. I forgot about
totally.
everything.
But
in Civil War.
they hold it all together. At the end of the day, they are the sort of ideal couple in the Marvel universe. And
Exactly.
no matter what happens, no matter how many fish boys come around, or no matter how many times he stays up all night in the
Flap,
lab,
flap, flap.
they always stay together.
But so then on the DC side of things, whenever I think of couples, I think Lois and Clark.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Lois and Clark sometimes veer into Peter and Mary Jane territory where their relationship ends up hurting the story.
Yeah.
But
Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
which we're gonna get to in a minute. But they're sort of, I guess, because of Superman's stature in the
They're
universe.
the longest standing couple,
Yes.
clearly. And when I think anybody on the
Well, if you don't
street
count, like,
and you
Jay
go,
and
what's the
Joan.
superhero couple? What's the famous one? They're
Forrest
always
Gump.
going to think of that, and then
They have a
somebody's
TV
going to
show,
say,
yeah.
"Really, Margot Kidder?" And then
Well, if you don't count the Justice Society relationships, which are longer standing.
Oh,
but
Liberty Bell and
Hour
Hour Man.
Man,
That's
yeah.
my favorite DC couple. They're the best.
we're doing that later.
I know, but still,
Get too excited. The thing I always liked about the Superman, the Lois and Clark dynamic, and even though he's the most powerful character, I guess, that there is, she's very independent from him. Like, they have one of those sort of relationships where they're not codependent at all.
No,
they're
they're
just
not.
like,
They're very
hey, I'm going to
independent.
go off and leave the world. I always say, okay, I'll see you later. Like, they don't.
Yeah.
They need each other, but they don't need each other.
other.
But
You know what I'm
there's
saying?
also the benefit of when she runs off to cover something in Afghanistan, he can just fly over there and see her.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Well, and as we learned from the last film, he will be watching.
So the other when I think of superhero comics in relationship, personally for me, because I'm an X-Men fan, and X-Men have often been
it's the soap opera-iest of the soap operas.
All, yeah, yes. Exactly. And the classic coupling or triangle, if you want to have it, is always seemed to have been revolved around Scott, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, and a third party, whether it's Logan pining for Jean or later on that bitch Emma going after Scott.
Oh, they're into multiples.
Yeah, no, well, not at the same time.
Well, it's a fascinating thing because it is the most famous love triangle in comics. Yet, Jean's been dead for almost 10 years.
Yep.
And he's been with Emma for almost 10 years.
Yeah, that bitch.
And
Logan doesn't want anything to do with her.
No, he doesn't.
So at some point, when does Emma supplant Jean as Scott's primary girlfriend?
Never.
If Jean never comes back.
Oh, you think Jean's never coming back?
It's been 10 years, which is basically never.
The thing is, I mean, the seed of the core of the interest in that relationship right now, if I'm looking at it, is that Jean's not there, but she's always there.
Exactly.
And so that's the conflict in that relationship, is that no matter how far they come, no matter how much Scott and Emma get along and are a couple, she's always right there in the back of his mind, and she knows it because she's psychic.
And the thing about Emma is that she is one step away from falling out of like she always has a foot on the on the evil side,
which makes it exciting.
Well, yeah, it makes it edgy and exciting. But at the same time, if Scott
Scott
finds out about Shaw, if Scott all these things that Scott finds out about, shit will go down.
As far makeup as sex.
When Jean was around, the whole Logan thing, that was the classic.
Go Diamond.
That was the classic. That was the classic. What Scott wasn't. Logan represented
he was the bad boy,
which is interesting now that as Scott has evolved into more of a badass character, when Jean does come back, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But surprising, as much as my love for Cyclops.
But before we move on, it's interesting if you're a new comics reader who's come along in the last, because we've seen a lot of them. To them, it's Scott and Emma.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And they will be the ones who calling Jean a bitch.
No.
And then you two will fight.
Now the thing is, despite my love for Cyclops as a character and Jean as a character, my personal favorite romance in the X-Men books is Kitty and Colossus.
Peter.
Peter.
When did that start?
Started when she was a teen.
Too early.
Too early.
Yeah.
Well, how old was he supposed to be?
Older.
He was like late teens, early 20s, and she was 14, 15, whatever.
In Soviet Russia.
She had a crush, and then they were together. It was almost very My So-Called Life-ian, because she had the crush forever, and then they finally got together, and then
Did you ever watch My So-Called Life?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, damn.
And then they finally got together, and it didn't work, didn't last, and then things went. Then finally, Joss Whedon gave us the moment where she's back. And they're on equal footing. They slept together, and possibly one of the best. Oh, come on!
It's true.
When they came down to the kitchen and Wolverine smiled, it was about time.
We're gonna have the same reaction in a minute. The next time
I don't remember that.
Oh, it was great. They had their night.
Yeah.
And then they show it.
I didn't start reading until issue 14.
Oh, that's why.
Peter came back from the dead.
Peter came back from the dead, and they got through it. They go home. They finally get together, and then the next morning they come down to the kitchen on opposite sides, and Wolverine just looks, and then he just goes, "About time." And it was perfect. It was perfect.
Because he can smell the juices.
Anyway.
Wow.
So I'm a big fan of Kitty and Peter because a lot of it was the teen, like the romance, the crush.
We're gonna get the emails this week.
I'm kind of aiming for it.
In a sort of similar way, Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon are a very similar path on those two, in that they were teen heroes together. They never really were. She was older. Actually, it was just the reverse. She was in college and he was in high school, and she was out of college when he was still in college. And so then they always had that kind of flirty thing, but not really in the old comics because that's when Dick was in Robin. But in the modern age, they sort of established that flirty thing, especially in the year one retellings. They definitely established that. But it took for years while he was Nightwing and she was Oracle, and then finally, it was probably, I don't know, almost 10 years ago when they first had that official kiss and they first started dating, and it felt the same way. It was
and she was Oracle.
Yeah, at that
point.
point.
So she was.
I remember he was teaching her how to do the acrobat stuff.
Yeah.
And
I remember. Yeah, you had that same.
I had the same reaction. I was like, finally.
Yeah. Well,
and of course.
Well, it's funny because as we were talking about this, I could rattle off Marvel couples, like and we're gonna do.
Go.
But I had a hard time thinking about DC. But now that I think about it, you got Green Arrow, Black Canary.
Yeah.
Which always dancing around each other. There always seems to be a problem.
Pretty Bird.
And remember when they finally got together, the wedding issue, and then they fucked it all up. But so
yes.
And then as I mentioned earlier, I love Liberty Bell and Hourman. Yep. I love them as a couple. Like they're fantastic. So DC does.
And you have those classic
couples.
Silver Age Justice League couples. Hal and Carol, Barry and Iris,
Wally and Linda,
and then you have Ralph and Sue. But like you've got all those. Carter and Shiera, and you've got Adam and also the crazy
Jean Lauren.
So you've got all those Silver Age
Ray
Justice
Palmer,
League
Jean
characters who had their wives or girlfriends that were
You
really
don't have to
much
explain
part
it
of
to me. The camera's on.
Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo, also known as C2E2. March 18th through 20th. McCormick Place in downtown Chicago. Graphic novels, comics, games. C2E2, C2E2,
C2E2 is awesome.
C2E2.com. Movies. TV. Cosplay.
We are at C2E2 in Chicago.
Meet me there, please.
But on the Marvel side of things, I mean, Captain America, Sharon Carter.
It
has been
feels like, and this is
was
gonna be, I'm
Bernie.
gonna compare the two,
Okay.
but it does feel like DC have got these long-standing couples together, whereas Marvel's characters,
very fleeting.
they sort of move around a little more. They're a little more loose. They came about in the '60s.
It depends on the character. Depends on the characters.
Well, as evidenced by the Black Widow, who over the past 40 years has been with Daredevil, Iron Man, Hawkeye, Captain America. Now she's with Bucky. Pretty much every Avenger slept with the Black Widow, as far as I'm concerned.
But on the same token, Tony Stark is the
Stark.
slept everybody.
Well,
Yeah. Well, he's
Who's Tony Hart not? He's
Yeah.
not slept with it without anyone.
Did you say who's Tony's hard?
It's Tony's
No,
Hart.
Stark hasn't slept with, but
Yes.
I don't see him going through the hero women. He just goes through women. It's not like he slept with Tiger, slept with
Oh, yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he slept with
Yeah.
Tiger.
I think everyone slept with Tiger. It's
funny
It's
'cause
the fur, isn't it?
I remember reading Tigra when I was a kid in the Avengers books, and it never occurred to me what was going on. And now, whenever she shows up, it's just slutfest.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all she's used for.
Oh, Hawkeye Mockingbird, the
Hawkeye, Mockingbird, but they were like,
that started in the 80s.
there's actually a progression to that where they met each other and flirted around, were a couple, got married. Like it was a very standard progression with that, and and then they, she died and whatever's going on now, but. Now they're together and not together.
But the whole couple, I mean, it depends on the characters. I mean, the reason why Dick and Barbara couldn't be together is because he was sleeping with Huntress and he was sleeping with everybody going on. And Batman's got 14 girlfriends.
And that's really the key of what makes relationships work in the superhero
Drake,
comic
too.
or in the soap opera environment is that you've got somebody who is pining and the other person who either acknowledges it and shuns or circumstance gets in the way or it's
it's
or somebody
interesting
dies.
when you talk about Batman to me is a really interesting one because it feels like all of the really interesting relationships, in fact the only ones that are interesting with Batman are with villains.
This one, Zatanna.
Yeah, that's sort of one of those sort of.
She's a magician, and
it's
it's so
true.
counter to his life.
That's true, but again, it's still in an opposite way. But really, Catwoman is the one you think of, or
Catwoman and
Talia.
Talia,
You know, like those things, and it's just wrong. You're like, this shouldn't, and you know that, like at
But
some
it's right.
level, right? But at some level, even Batman himself, like Bruce, has got to be going, I can't do this, and it's the one thing where his supreme willpower and his ability, like he fails. You know what? Because those chicks is hot.
We mentioned in the beginning soap operas, and there's classic tropes in soap opera relationships that totally are apparent in comics, whether people who are reading comics realize them or not. There's always that one couple that they're usually older, the Reed and the Sue character that always is together in the soap opera show. There's always that
They
one
still
couple.
draw her like she's 25.
Right, but then everyone else sort of does this. They come back together and
Yeah.
they break up because you have to do that in a long-running serial.
keep it interesting, yeah.
When people freaked out about Mary Jane and Peter, that's because, which we'll talk about, but that's because it tends to get stale, and when the relationship is part of, and I keep doing this because it's some sort of weird dance, but when the relationship gets
love
stale,
guru.
that's part of the storytelling, and you can't have the story get stale.
So Spider-Man is the classic case where Spider-Man, he in the 60s he dated, Gwen Stacy,
Betty and Gwen
Betty
and-
Brant and stuff like that. But then he, right around this, after Gwen Stacy died in the 70s, Mary Jane became his primary squeeze, with a little dalliance with the black
And
cat.
I love the Black Cat part.
Yeah,
Because
Black
every time
Cat,
he
yeah.
shows up, you're
Same as
you're
Batman's problem.
exactly, but
Yeah.
you're like, Peter, hit that.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a great time.
So then,
Seriously.
and he did. He dated the Black Cat for a while,
Right,
And then he,
but it doesn't work, and that's what's interesting. Is
Yeah.
because like, this is so sexy, and she's perfect, and I don't really like
And
her.
then and then he eventually married Mary Jane, and they used the marriage to Mary Jane as a way to evolve the character, to make him older, to make him more responsible. I'm pro him being married to Mary Jane until evil Mr. Quesada decided to tear it all down. But
I'm not calling anybody evil.
no. And then, but the idea is that it staled and that it really limited the character. And so now in the new, era of Spider-Man, he's dating Carly Cooper, and it makes it difficult with the secret identity and all stuff like that.
That's part of the hallmark of superhero storytelling.
Exactly.
When you strip away all that stuff, you lose what made the characters themselves in the first place. Which is the Lois and Clark problem, is that there was always the love triangle. We talk about famous love triangles. It used to be, before the marriage, Superman, Lois, and Clark. the most unique love triangle because two of them were the same person.
People. Yeah, exactly.
And that was always the hallmark of the character was she loved Superman, but she didn't love Clark. Yeah. Clark just wanted her to love Clark because Clark's the real guy. But
as opposed to Batman.
Right. So but once they had that marriage and once he revealed it, it sort of killed that aspect of the character. Yeah, now, there's other great things that Superman, as there are with Spider-Man, but that was always so important.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. It's like will they or won't they is always going on, and when they do, Cheers is over.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Basically.
Yeah.
No, they just kick out. They just kick out. They kick out Diana, Bring, and Rebecca.
Yeah, it's moonlighting. I mean, that's what it is.
And that's the boss.
And that's the thing about with comics is that what do we need to get you to read the next issue? And by keeping you on the edge and just like them, you never quite get that happiness. It's that extended.
But at the same time, though, after you've got them married, then I don't know why, but there's this rule like you can't get them divorced. No one wants a divorced superhero.
Yeah. Well,
although that's a story.
You can't ring that bell. That's why.
That's a story that needs to be told. I think if you think about it, has it?
Keep your mouth shut.
Again.
You get your pen and paper there. So
it's a bell you can't unring.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Definitely.
No, but I mean that is the fun of it too, though. You want to see them together, but you don't. I mean, like we talked about earlier, when Dick and Barbara finally got together, yes, and they got apart, and I was like, damn it, those motherfuckers!
Well, that's the whole thing.
But that's what makes it fun.
Kitty and Colossus was that astonishing X-Men. Finally, they got together. They're together, fantastic. And then Space Bullet, and we lose Kitty for years. And then now she's a ghost, and they can't touch or talk or anything. And it's like, God damn you, Whedon.
Yeah, but that's good though because there's the tension.
The tension is there, and so they want to be together. And
the thing is, if every character,
I want to love you, but I can't touch you.
She married Dracula?
she married Lou Ferrigno.
If the characters are all happy and they're all with the people they love and nothing ever happens, it's going to be boring.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's
sometimes.
We
you mentioned Our Man and Liberty Bell.
No, there are some, but there's always
the thing about Our Man and Liberty Bell is that it's one panel every 4 issues in the Justice Society.
It's true.
Like if they gave as much as I want, like I would say, ooh, someone should do an Our Man.
No, there's a backup tale. They're in a backup book. And it's good.
But
it's a couple pages.
I just love the way they hang on each other and they're just so like, I love that.
Like literally like 6 panels total ever.
I know, but it was fantastic.
That's why the power of it is.
Yeah, exactly. So good. So good.
Well, if you take that sort of will they or won't they, and you take it to other kinds of comics, if you look at Scott Pilgrim, which is obviously, if not the biggest sort of non-superhero comic in a while, that whole story is a will they or won't they, because you really don't know what Scott's going to do, and you have the love triangle with Knives Chow, and things like, same thing though.
And Kim and all this sort of it was more of it's Scott and Ramona was the main thrust of it. They were together for the majority of the story, but it was the difficulties of being together.
Right, you weren't sure, like, I don't know if these guys, like they have an attraction, but I'm not sure if they're going to do it, and that... Like people, it's funny to hear people talk about that book. They don't talk about the story, so they're like, "Oh, I love Ramona." Like they want that relationship, and you kind of wonder, well, Jesus, is she too good, too smart, too advanced for him?
Too American.
He's a little dim, is what I'm saying.
Canadian.
Things like that, yeah.
Scott and Ramona, that's a great modern kind of romance, whatever. But then the classic couple that you love and Preacher.
And Preacher, my favorite couple in comics history, and this is actually different than the Will They or Won't They, is Jesse Custer and Tulip from Preacher, because first of all, Garth Ennis he's the master of relationships. No one thinks of him that way. They think of him as the master of shock, gross, gore stuff.
Violence.
He is, if not the best guy at relationships in comics, then as good as anyone
I don't know
else.
if anybody's better.
This is what I'm saying. And the thing is, right away, that's a couple who are meant to be together, and the story is the world against that, the world against them, and like they keep trying, like Jesse keeps trying to protect her by leaving her. He's like, I can't have you around while I'm doing this, and she tries to leave him, and stuff happens in that.
Vampire shows up,
and you know right from the beginning, you're like, this couple is meant to be together. They should be together. This is the way it should be, and the stuff that happens in the middle is heart-wrenching. It guts you because it's the opposite of will they or won't they. They should. Yeah. They need to. Why won't you let them, God? Or Garth. And the same thing. But like that's the one that right away, that's one of the great couples.
So we could probably go on and on about great couples in comics, stuff like that. And you probably got a lot of great opinions of them as well. So go to iFanboy.com. There's a whole post about this episode. Tell us your favorite couples and what work, what don't work, who shouldn't be together, who should be together, and that sort of thing. So.
I think Meredith and McDreamy need to...
Feinberg.
I hate her.
You can check out our audio show every Sunday. We talk about the week's new releases, all the new books from of the week. If you ever want to hear what we think about what's happening now in comics, that's where you can find it. iFanboy is member supported. Become a member. You can find out about that at fanboy.com/store. That's also you can buy T-shirts. You can call our voicemail line 888-FANBOY 3262697. You can send us an email, contact@fanboy.com.
Go with it, baby.
And you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/iFanboy.
Yeah. She's getting more and more dumpy looking every season.
I stopped watching it years ago.
Oh, she's
it's been so good this season.
has been really
You tell
good.
me that every year.
And
No,
welcome to
This is
Grey's
so
Anatomy
good
talk.
this season.
No. That fucking haircut. Not like Mr. Clean over there. Not bald Mr. Clean, but
I understand.
okay. Scott and
Emma.
No, Jane! Gene!
who's Jane?
Jane.